Mr. Speaker.
I call Pini Henare, a 5-minute call.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker. Ngā mihi nui ki a koe, o tira ki a tātou katoa. Mr. Speaker, I rise to take a short call on the Civil Defence Emergency Management Amendment Bill. And I'm encouraged to hear the collegiality across the House with regard to this bill. Clearly, there are different viewpoints at the beginning of this bill, but through collegiality, hard work, and a focus on what matters, we've come to a point now where there's a wide acceptance of the bill, where despite some apprehensions, which I'll cover off very shortly, with particular clauses that have been removed from the bill and some that we believe on this side of the House certainly lack a bit of clarity. Despite all of that, we've come to a point now where we are supporting this bill. We think it's a step in the right direction. We note the contributions of the House and of course of the report that says that this is first part of the bill. There is a second part of the bill which is a broader, wider review. However, we do want to express our concerns, sir, that there doesn't seem to be any clear timeline around that particular review, and we'd hate for a civil emergency to take place before we realise, well, actually, perhaps we should have had a timeline in place so that these things can be avoided. Mr. Speaker, there's always an argument between recovery and response readiness. Mr. Speaker, in 2014 August, leading into the election, there was significant floods in the far north. Major chunks of State Highway 1 were taken out. Infrastructure was affected. But I think one of the things, having been a resident in the far north at that particular time, and a lot of family members up there, was around that response readiness. And I often wonder when we deliberate on bills such as these, how does this translate into actually how whānau, people on the ground, are able to mobilise, are able to respond effectively and in a timely manner to ensure that they do not suffer the ill effects of such emergencies. And when I read this through this particular bill, I think there are some good steps forward around some clear appointments around the particular roles of people in an emergency, so that there isn't that confusion on the ground. But I do want to pick up the point made by several members of the House on this side that actually talk about that imbalance of power and making sure that local responses aren't lost in the debate, in the response, and also the recovery of areas as a result of states of emergency. And it's important that those voices on the ground are heard, because far too often we see Big Brother come in with all of the right intentions, we see them sweep out and nothing's changed at home. Nothing's changed on the ground. Are we, after one event, more responsive and more prepared for the next one? The argument too often, sadly, is no, we aren't. And we see that quite often because what was once a 50-year occurrence is now sort of happening 3 to 4 times in a decade. And we just can't pick when those are. But it's important that we learn from the lessons of the past and we're able to prepare for any future event. Mr. Speaker, Section 57A has been removed. And this does cause some concern around the recovery plans and strategic recovery plans, meaning that there isn't much direction there for those people in the regions who are on the ground and for many are volunteering their time to actually do the work, to make sure that communities are looked after, they're able to respond to emergencies and also able to recover. Without those clear, defined parameters that legislation often allows us to put in place, without that framework, I'm afraid that we could potentially see a lack of recovery and response from future emergencies. Sir, just in closing, I too want to support the sentiments made across the House to the speedy recovery of our colleague, the Honourable Nikki Kate, and I want to conclude by saying we support this bill.